Welcome to the first in a series of videos making a fan-made Super Mario Tabletop RPG. Today I'm going to focus on a starter set starring Mario and some of his most iconic accessories and characters. While I'm trying to make this professional, it's truly a DIY project. Take a look at these basic supplies I'm using. An aluminum foil tube, wooden blocks, the center of a Scotch tape roll, Shrinky Dink paper, colored pencils, Sharpies, glossy and matte Mod Podge, tacky glue, miniature grass and foliage, wooden discs, styrene sheet, model building rod. All this stuff is easy to grab from a craft store, or it might be in your house already. Shrinky Dink paper is the MVP of this project though. I like the rough and ready version, which just means it's more suited to markers and colored pencils. To start, I'm outlining with Sharpie on the smooth, glossy side of the Shrinky Dink paper and tracing a picture I printed for my computer. I'm using Paper Mario as my starting point because the style of the games are already crafty in a lot of ways, and because of that I'm making two Shrinky Dinks of Mario that are mirrored so I can glue them together and have a double-sided plastic figure that, in true Paper Mario fashion, is two-dimensional. A lot of YouTube channels that make small, nerdy crafts like I do also make terrain and buildings specifically for miniature tabletop games or wargaming, like Dungeons & Dragons. A lot of those creators focus on realistic fantasy, sci-fi, or maybe historical settings. I don't have a lot of experience playing these games, but I love building miniatures for them. And so I was thinking, what world would I really love to see as a tabletop game? And Super Mario was the answer. I love it because it's bright and colorful. It's really fun, and I think it'll translate to some fun scenery and characters, accessories, and so I have lots of ideas of what I want to do with these. For this one, I'm just using basic Crayola colored pencils for now. I love them. Coloring with only markers might be more vibrant, but I really love the shading you can get with colored pencils. After outlining and coloring, it was time to cut them out. I cut them as close as I could to match, and now it's time for Mario to shrink. Before going into the oven, Mario measures around 3 inches tall. And so Mario is just a little over 1 inch tall. I just used some tacky glue to stick the two Marios together. You want to use something that won't make the colored pencil run or bleed, so nothing too wet. Now Mario needs something to stand on. I made this mud paste for another project and reused it here. It's basically just brown and black paint, some Mod Podge and modeling paste. And I spread this on some wooden discs. These are going to be the bases for my characters and items. These discs I bought in a bag full of, a couple hundred of all different sizes at a craft store. The wider ones are a little over 1 inch and the smaller ones are about a 1/2 inch. They're pretty thin, so to help them not warp, I put them down on packaging tape that was sticky side up and kept them there until dry. After dry brushing, I put down a layer of watered down glue and a dusting of miniature grass, and they were ready for Mario to be glued into place. Then I repeated the process for Mario's two enemies that I'm making in this starter pack, a Piranha Plant and Goomba. I chose these two because when I think of Mario, these are the classic enemies in my mind. Mario encounters them pretty quick in the first game on the original Nintendo. Underestimate this Goomba at your own peril. He's probably got the biggest body count in gaming, right? I also chose a Piranha Plant because he goes really well with the other iconic Mario scenery I wanted to make. a warp pipe. This thicker wooden disc is going to be the base for the pipe, but the pipe itself is really simple. I cut about 1 inch off the cardboard tube from the center of an aluminum foil roll, and then used the plastic spool that's in the center of Scotch tape for the top. They fit together perfect. And then I cut out a piece of foam to fill out the middle, and this will give something for the characters to stand on, so it looks like they're halfway in the pipe, you know. And then it was ready for sanding and painting, and I mixed green paint with Mod Podge to make it a little thicker coat. I painted the inside black and then gave it all a nice coat of glossy Mod Podge so it was a little shiny. Once the pipe was all painted, I got the base ready. In hindsight, I wish I'd used that mud mixture again, but I don't think it ultimately made much difference because it ended up getting covered up. I glued the pipe into place and taped it off, and then used some watered down Mod Podge as my glue layer for spreading out miniature grass. And once that dried, I surrounded the pipe with clump foliage to act as bushes, and I really like how it looks like this pipe just emerged from the middle of the bushes, or maybe they grew around it. Now, you can't make Mario anything without a couple blocks. And to make my Mario blocks, I'm using wooden blocks. These two are going to look very different by the end. First, I'm going to make a floating question mark block. I found the center, drilled a little hole, and super glued a metal rod. This is going to act as the support so it'll float. And I like the shiny silver metal rods because it kind of disappears when you look at it, but they're still also strong. I printed out the question mark shape and then cut it into a thin layer of styrene. My X-Acto knife helped trace the shape, but I ended up using scissors to cut it out. That helped get really straight lines on each edge. Then I painted the block with a few layers of yellow and glued the question marks into place. I drilled tiny holes to act as the rivets in all 4 corners of each side. For kids learning their multiplication tables, that means 16. After testing it with Mario's jumping for height, I cut it to about 2 inches of wire and glued that to a base. I ended up having to prop it up to dry, obviously. But even with the tape on the bottom, this base warped, and I ended up gluing a second wooden disc to the base with the wooden grain going in the opposite direction, and that gave added strength, so there was no warping. Now, for the second block, this is going to be a classic Mario brick block. I used my saw to create straight guidelines all around the block for the brick pattern, which is a little tricky. I had to look up online exactly how this pattern looked because I got tripped up a couple times. But once the lines were in place, I used some files to sand down the mortar lines of the brick block. These blocks were 3/4 of an inch on each side, so it's a pretty small surface to work with. Then I painted a darker brown first to get into the grooves of the block with the lighter sort of orangey brown color for its classic look. No Mario is complete without some items to collect. First up, a gold coin. I cut some circles out of styrene. Basically, the coin is 3 layers. There's just a plain circle in the middle, and then both of the sides of the coin are a circle with a little rectangle cut out in the center. After gluing them together and sanding it, I gave it a yellow base coat. That really helped the gold paint that I painted on it to be a little more vibrant. And then one last Shrinky Dink for the road. I made a small power mushroom using the same process as before, so nothing new here. But together, all these pieces make a great starter set. You've got your player character with Mario, items to give him points or health that can be hidden inside of blocks. And then you've got enemies to fight, and an objective maybe, like reach the warp pipe. The idea is that all the stuff that I made is super easy to make at home. I think even kids can make this. And I think using Shrinky Dinks and making them double-sided makes these feel like really solid figures while still feeling like Paper Mario. But like I said, this is only the beginning. I've got a lot of ideas for other Mario buildings, terrain, characters to make. So I'm going to have a playlist of all the videos in this series, and there's going to be more coming. If you have ideas of what else I should make, I would love to hear your ideas. Put them in the comments. Subscribe so you can see future episodes in this series, and check out all the other video projects I've made. Thank you for watching. This has been Mr. Screenwrite, and I will see you in the next video.